But
All right, well, let's go. Hey, everybody, and welcome. This is Bob, and I'm having a conversation with Dominick Domasky. Is that
you're right.
correct?
You're right there, Domasky, Dominick Domasky.
All right, fantastic. I always try to take a guess. I didn't want to ask ahead of time because that's kind of my favorite thing is to guess people's names. So I was close enough.
Yeah, you're good. I once had an interview, and I was a podcast host, and I interviewed a guy for about an hour and said
Uh-huh.
his name wrong the whole time, and then at the end of the hour, he corrected me. Now, meanwhile, I wasn't trying to guess names, and I had a like a cue before where I hoped people would have come, like for
Uh-huh.
5 minutes we could get to know each other, and he skipped that, and
Yeah.
then because of that, I butchered his name.
Oh, that's part of the fun for me. That's why I don't like to do too much talking ahead of time. I like to just jump in and see where everything takes us. So you're the founder of Motivation Champs. All right. So you have a task ahead of you today. I am severely unmotivated.
Oh, dang.
And I don't, I mean, I don't know how you could be, how do you become a motivation champ? I mean, that to me, it just sounds like an inconceivable task.
That's fair, Bob. And I don't believe Bob is unmotivated here hosting podcast and meeting new people and chasing dreams. So I think it would be perception. So already I find you, this is a pretty motivated dude I'm
Why he's
talking to
called
here.
me a liar right out of the gate.
Yeah, we're coming back, but I get the premise where some people might think it's phony or it's BS or how. So I live in a world where 20 years from now, I hope there's no divisive content. I hope people hold the doors for each other. I hope people don't look at somebody and judge them because they're this or that or different from them.
Mhm.
So I try 24/7, 365 days to share positive content, to share smiles, to share inspiration, like hanging out with Blue Bob here. Like to me, Blue Bob makes me smile. So this is sharing inspiration, motivation. Find those little things that each day you get joy from. Maybe and I'm just gonna touch on that. Just maybe appreciate every second, like hanging with Blue Bob. Has anybody called you Blue Bob before?
No, that's they've mentioned the blue color, but I don't think they've ever put the two together yet. To be honest
Okay,
with you,
all
I've
right.
been called Bobcat. I've been called Blue Cat, but not Blue Bob. So that's a new one.
There we
But I'll
go.
take it. I'll
Let's
take it.
go. Let's go. Let's go.
I think everybody gets a little. You're actually pointing out more than most people that I am a cartoon character. So most people just kind of ignore it and go with it, which is kind of funny. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I will not. I will not. I recognize it, and I believe in telling stories, and my whole mission is to help people share their story. Right? Be you. There's only. I think about this fact that there's between 7.5 billion and 8 billion people on the planet, and there's only one me. If I come on here and try to be anybody else but me, I will fail. But if Bob Lament, if Bob is a blue cat and that's what he wants to be, go do it and be the best at it. And so, congratulations. So I like to talk about it.
oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So then, so the motivation. So obviously, much like everybody else, you had a childhood and you grew up and so forth. But what led you in the direction to do to create Motivation Champs? I mean, that was there some kind of pivotal moment in your history that you're like, I'm tired of sitting around here eating Oreos and watching reruns, and I'm going to do something? Or what happened with you to trigger this?
So the question, it was everything perfect all along, and then it just because life was so perfect, I said, "Hey, I'm gonna call myself. I'm gonna give myself my own nickname." And really, it is not. So I am a publisher of books.
Mhm.
That's what I do by day. I help people share their stories. So all like kind of what I talked about already, like 24/7 helping. I want to share inspiration, positivity, and smiles. Part of that is helping other people share their story, giving them platforms to share their story. So me, I did not come from a silver spoon, or we all have I was a restaurateur, lost $500,000 in my 20s. Been punched in the face my fair share of times, toiled in the corporate world when I had idea to help people do what I do now, but I just was probably afraid after after going broke and losing a lot. So it took a lot of time. So yeah, inch by inch, day by day. That's how I got there, Bob.
But those are circumstances which everybody doesn't find themselves in necessarily. I hope not, at least. Whenever you're in kind of crushing debt, even though it's not tangible in a physical form, right? It's very, kind of, imaginary in a way. Obviously, people are coming to you for the money or what have you, but as far as the actual pressure, it all comes from within, right? So how did you cope with that kind of pressure in that situation? That seems like that would be something that would be the opposite of motivating for people.
Yeah, and I don't think I was where I was today back then. So to dig in on that, I was so motivated enough to start a restaurant in my early 20s, figure out how to fund it. I didn't have rich uncles or cousins or anything like that. I went for it. But then after 3 years later, I was $500,000 in debt, and people were coming to collect, and I was, there was no way out. I had tried staying open later. I had tried catering. I had tried selling my soul. I did pretty much all those things to make it last. But I feel like during that time, I was given a book when I was about 13, around the time I got cut from a basketball team. I got cut from a junior high team, and my dad gave me this Ogmandino book. And this Ogmandino book, there was scrolls in this book, and if you did something, there was 10 scrolls at the end of it, and I will take action. I will take action. And if you did what these scrolls said for 30 straight days, they started to become a habit. So later on, when the restaurant was struggling, I'm going through these tough times, I started referring back to these inspirational books and reading more inspirational books and studying motivation and all these other people, the greats, Dale Carnegie, Norman Vincent Peale, John C. Maxwell, all these guys. And so they helped me get through that time. And when things did go completely south, I was ready and understood. Yeah, that's all right. I can start. Anybody listening, they can start from wherever they're at and get to it's not too late. They can still accomplish their wildest dreams. And I don't think I was I was no different, and I'm still on that journey.
That's fantastic. So you basically found some solace and comfort in reading all these different folks, and it gave you a different perspective, perhaps, than just I got cut from the team. Now I'm not a team mate for these, this team or whatever. I'm just the guy that didn't make it.
Yeah, and early on, so when it first happened, like let's say the cut from the team, and now 20 years later we're talking about the restaurant business or however many. When it first happened, yeah, all failure hurts and all those setbacks hurt, but it only matters. It's only over if you give up on it. So same with basketball. Like I have very little talent and very little skill when it comes to playing the game of basketball, but I did not quit and ended up playing later on for 2 years in college. So I go from this little kid that get beat up and can't dribble a ball to cutting down nets at a D3 school. So with anything, you start to learn, and to fast forward that to the restaurant business or to today, that I'm reading, I'm studying like any of us. If we want to learn something new, if Bob wants to learn about podcasting or a new microphone, we learn it, we practice it. And then eventually we don't have to just refer to the manual all the time. We are able to implement those teachings on our own and do it by trial and error. And that's how I end up writing my first book. I start thinking, I got something to say, and it's a little bit different. And then once I wrote the first book, I started thinking, wait, other people have stories, and let's talk about their stories. How do we help them share their story? Just like this podcast here, you sit down with a lot of different types of people and help them share their stories and give them a voice. And I thought there's a lot of good people out there that have something to say. Let's try to help them. That's what Motivation Champs is.
So let's go. So you mentioned your first book, right? So let's go
Yeah,
back to that. So you're at what? So you wrote the book after your restaurant closure, or whatever you want to say. I don't want to say failure, because you don't want to say failure a lot. That just sounds terrible, doesn't it? But
yeah,
after the restaurant thing,
everybody. So let's embrace that. People are so touchy about this term, like failure. Like some people say you can't say it. Some people say you got to embrace it. Some people say nothing's a failure unless you give up on it. So I'm not afraid. I don't like people are so quick to jump on somebody else for how their usage of that word. I'm not that. I just would encourage people not to give up.
But so the book happened after that, right? So so you're done with that, right? And you're dealing with the aftermath and so forth for that. So what made you go, you know what? I'm going to write a book now.
I was working. You may remember this. I don't know how old Bob is here.
That's the point of the cat. You never know. They got 9 lives. That could be ancient.
That's right. So back in the day, there was a thing called phone books. And after I had my run in the restaurant business, I got the first corporate job I could get. I took a sales job rather than going back into the restaurant business, which was probably the obvious choice at the time that I was experienced in. But I said, I'll go into sales. I'm ready to try something new. And they were big on writing your goals. And so at first I would write in there, get 2 sales this week, make 10 appointments, whatever the goal was. And then I started writing in there some of my personal things: pay off Mr. Malaberti, pay off this magazine that I owed for advertising, pay off Cisco food service. And then so now I'm writing personal goals. And then all of a sudden I wrote in there, I would start writing little notes or phrases. And then soon enough, I'm looking at it, studying it. And I thought, I have something to say. I got myself a little notebook. That same notebook I'm writing these goals in, I wrote on the front of it, first book. And that's how I started writing a book. And I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea how that even worked. I just started writing.
But you were selling ads in the phone book? Is that what?
Yeah, I was selling phone book ads. Yep, selling phone book ads, going to little neighborhoods. They'd put you in a little neighborhood for about 4 months and then bring somebody else in, and then bring somebody else in. And we would move to another county or city for another 3 months, 6 months. That would be the next campaign.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
That sounds tough. That sounds tougher than the restaurant business, if you ask me.
Yeah. Anyway, it's all a journey, and to each their own. Sometimes you could say, well, it's freedom. You're out choosing where you want to drive or how many stops you want to make. But then on the other hand, the no's and rejection. And I wrote in a different book one time that I think in sales, I was told no at least 20,000 times. And you figure out that's you and anybody else that's listening that's in sales, they're probably thinking, I was told,
that's your next book. 20,000 no's mean yes.
Yeah, the no's definitely add up, but you never know when that next yes is coming.
I always think that's amazing. I've never had to do sales like that, right? I mean, nothing that where you're constantly at it like that, and you're constantly trying to attain a goal or whatever. I just think that seems so, so beyond, because you have to go through all that. And then, what do you do? How do you keep your mindset such that, you've gone a week or something with everybody just telling you to get out of here, or I don't want to talk, I don't want to talk to you, or whatever, and then you're got to get into the next week.
Yeah.
It seems like that would be a really tough task on a person to constantly be in that kind of mode of interaction.
Well, you you have to know, you have to believe in the product, you have to believe in what you're doing. But there was definitely times where through my sales career when I was in sales, like whether in Yellow Pages, where you had to have two sales in a week, or you could be put on a plan, or in insurance, if you didn't sell so many of a certain type of policy in a year or quarter, you could be put on a plan. Or in pharmaceuticals, if you didn't, I was in pharmaceuticals too, if you
Okay.
didn't sell this or this, you could be. So there is a pressure that you need to produce, and sometimes that pressure lights a fire, and sometimes it'll melt somebody.
That's a good analogy there. Lights a fire and melts them.
Yeah.
They can't stand it.
Yeah.
The Did you have like a go-to thought process, like whenever you kind of got down on things, where you're like, okay, I'm going to think about maybe a personal goal, or something like that that is a little more within your wherewithal, or you're just like, okay, this Friday I'm going to get a good pizza.
Well, for anything, let's if we're just not going to my cells or anybody listening and going through whatever they're going through and wondering why they're doing it, I would use the words and say, remember the why. Remember, it's cliche sometimes, but why are you doing it? What was the reason? So when you think about going home early and watching some daytime soap opera, if you are willing to put in the reps, put in more time, uh, that typically with education, with work, with belief, a lot of good things will happen. So I the times do get stressful. And we had one contest where we were able to if you had so many cells in a week, you got to reach in a bag of money. But now I will and pull out as much money as you could with one
A
pull.
handful of money.
Yes. But
Yeah.
on that being said, that when I was on a like after all my restaurant struggles, I was on a government repayment plan for about 7 years. And there
Yeah.
were times where if I didn't get to reach in that bag of money, that I probably I might add $12 to last me the rest of the week afterwards, and that's for everything. So I think there
Oh,
was an extra effort understanding what the other side of the coin held for me.
wow. Do you think that it is helpful, or does it matter? Like if a person feels like they're unmotivated, right? They're reading your books, or coming to you. Does it matter if they have that kind of low point, or is that inconsequential? Because the low point kind of gives you that push. You're going to go one way or the other, right? And then when you're
Yeah.
at the low point, you're like, okay, I guess I got to go the other way now. If you're not in that situation, does that matter to the person? Do they have to hit a low point in order to bounce back and become more motivated?
Well, you open up a lot of questions there. And they say that rock bottom is the most solid foundation to build upon. But I am also a believer. So wherever you're at, I really believe wherever you're at, your next decision, whoever is listening right now, your next decision can change it all. It's not going to change. It's not going to change it all instantly, but it starts you on the right trajectory. So if you decide today, yeah, I no longer accept this. From this point forward, this is my foot in the sand. I no longer accept this. Okay, so that changes how how people talk to you, how what you receive, what they're saying, the effort you make today, and the effort you make longer because tomorrow, because you've chosen. I now it's going to take a week from now. You're going to be tested, and these things are going to come back to you. But you, for the reason that you wanted this, and this, I don't accept this anymore. And I think that would be a good starting point.
Now, and this is a little bit, but what about people who are addicted?
Yeah.
Right. So motivation is a huge factor
Yeah.
with
Yeah. Yeah.
people who are addicted to things because they are motivated towards the addiction, and you can't necessarily do that because it could be detrimental, right?
Yeah. And
So
I,
you have to
and
be motivated in another direction. So I mean, I don't know why I thought of that, but I was just thinking when you were talking, I was like, well, what if, because whenever you say rock bottom, probably is what triggered it in my head, is a lot of people use that term in relation to some type of addiction, either drugs or
mm,
alcohol or something,
yeah.
and that becomes a factor in your motivation because it seems like the addiction becomes more motivating than other parts of your life. Um, do you talk about that as far as your
Well,
books and so forth?
I would like to just preface for anybody going through those ups and downs and struggling with those types of addiction. I wish them only the best, and I support their journey and wish them hope. But it is not something. I am not a physician or qualified
Sure.
to touch on that in any way. So no,
Well,
my my
but lack
my
of motivation kind of goes hand in hand, oddly enough, with addiction because the
yeah.
person, like, if we just took your situation, if they had a proclivity to drink with this restaurant situation, they may just start drinking after that. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? More heavily than they would before. But anyway, we're
No,
getting
it's
off too far
interesting.
off topic. I
No,
don't know.
no. Well, I hear. I'll throw one back to you because there are a lot of times where there are two twins that would necessarily have the same. They would have the same. I think a twin has the same DNA. Maybe they do. Maybe they don't. But and they
Identical, well, identicals, I think, but not fraternals.
okay. So
Yeah.
in some situations, they could have the same upbringing and go completely different ways.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So their dad could have been an alcoholic. One decides to follow in their footsteps. The other decides I'm never going to touch that alcohol again. So
Oddly enough,
it's
that could be genetic as well. It's
yeah,
funny you mentioned that.
super
Al-
complex.
yeah, alcoholism can be genetic, but I didn't mean to get down that rabbit hole too far. To be honest with you, I
No,
just was thinking about when you said that. I was just like, wow, because I mean, that seems to be, when you're in a position, that seems to be one of the choices, at least in this day and age. That becomes one of the choices. You know what I
I,
mean?
yeah.
So
So to wrap that point up, I would say what my qualifications for that zero. What I will tell somebody is there's always hope when you think it's darkest. There's always hope. It's what do they say? Darkest before dawn. So
right, darkest before the dawn. Yeah.
hang in there. One more day. One more day.
Because a lot of these things that you're saying are also things that are in AA and so forth. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of interesting parallels there. Um, the so writing your book. So you decided. Let's get back to that.
Mhm.
You said I'm going to write this book, and you put it on your to-do list, right? Your goal list, which I'm a big fan of goals, by the way. I must say that whenever you said that, I'm like, hey, you know what? I do that. That's fantastic. I feel great now talking to you because you've supported something that I like. So, but so you have it on your goal list. So how did it? And if this was around the Yellow Pages times, then it wasn't quite the same procedure to write a book as it is now. So, because there wasn't as many outlets, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you could write your book, but then what do you do with it?
Yeah. Exactly. And to back to your point, I wasn't any good at it, so it took me 7 years to write my first book. So it
Oh
wasn't
gosh.
it
Yeah.
wasn't like I just was Ernest Hemingway or something when I started writing. No, I had no idea what I was doing. But I was a student of these other of the genre I liked. So anybody
Mm-hmm.
that is writing, I would encourage them to read, and start to see what else is out there. So the more I read, the more I understood. Okay, here's where I'm trying to go. But in truth, my first book came out with thousands of errors in it. I sold all my rights, and it could have been a hell of a lot better. So that's kind of how that led me into later on into the publishing world. I thought, I don't know that I want people to have that same kind of experience. I think I could do a little better.
So your first book, you actually did have publishers. So
Yeah.
because you said you sold your rights were gone. So that
Mhm.
means you went through some publishing house or something, and so then you had to do the sell on that, right? Because
Yeah, yeah. So
they didn't say, hey Dominic, we know you had a failed restaurant. We want you to write a book for us. So that's not kind of how they work generally.
yeah, and I would say to anybody here that's considering going down that road. So, one, I just mentioned genres. You need to know what genre your book falls in. And so, if you should want to shop publishers or find publishers, then you would look for them, first of all, that do the kind of book that you're doing, are interested in the kind of book you're doing. And then I got just like life, add the no's. I wasn't even talking the no's of people that weren't interested. But having been in sales, I understand repetition. I understand improving upon things, using the words and things that they were saying to me when I pitched future publishers, and that was when I had multiples. I understood the questions they were asking me and prepared the answers so that I could take on any future interested parties.
It's interesting. So you basically kind of learn the vernacular of the publishing industry in order to put kind of feedback what they know. So I don't know any publishing terms, to be honest with you, but you took all this information in and you're like, okay, they want to hear about, I give me a term that I could work with
Your
here.
query letter does not have this in it. We want
Ah,
you didn't tell us you didn't tell us your marketing numbers. You didn't tell us your mission. You didn't tell us similar books in your genre that you think this book would be like. So all
oh.
these things that they were saying to me, hell no, I didn't know what they were talking about. But after enough mentioned the same kind of things, then I would clean it up, get it better, and that's how that process came along.
That's interesting because I suppose that everybody kind of does it a little bit because you get involved in different areas of work or whatever, and you pick up on the terms, right, and then you start using the terms. But
Mm-hmm.
you did what I would call essentially a sped up process because you were like, okay, these are the terms I need to act like. I mean, I need to know these terms, not necessarily act like I know, but I need to know these terms and I need to spit these things back out to them so that then they go, oh, he knows these terms. He's answering these questions. He
Yeah, the
knows.
other publishers are saying this, and then even later on in the deal making process, once it got to the point where somebody was going to pay for all the costs and things like that, this other publisher is saying this,
Mhm.
and what do you think? It wasn't. I played everybody against each other.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Well, and that's also a bit of a sales thing too, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, right.
a little bit. So this all
Hello.
builds. You're
Hey,
building. I can see you building here, Dominic.
yeah,
And by the way, you have a great name anyway. So I mean, you got to have name appeal.
thank
Bob's
you,
not a
thank
good
you.
name for appealing to people, but Dominic is a very good name.
Bob's great.
So then you go down this journey. So at this point, you've written one book, right? It took you a while to do it, 7 years, you said,
Forever. Yeah.
but you got it done, right? So that
Hmm.
goal stayed on your sheet for 7 years, right?
Yeah, yeah, right.
And you didn't, scratch it out and go, well, that's never going to happen.
Yeah, my life changed, jobs changed, debt load changed, success levels changed. I became a dad, I think twice along the way there before it came out. And so all these things that could derail you, change of careers, they just kept on. But it's just part of the journey.
Yeah, well, that's the hard part. Having kids really slows you down. Not that it's a bad thing when I say that, but all your extra attention, any extra attention you had before, goes right to the kids. So you don't get to have your freewheeling, young life
Yeah.
if you got kids in the house that you're dealing with. So
And
that's always a tough thing.
yeah, so let's tackle that because I'm sure people are dealing with that kind of thing right now. Well, I believe in extending the day. So my cheat code to somebody that has whatever goal would be extend the day a little earlier, extend the day a little early later. If you're soccer mom dropping your kids off at school, maybe you're able to, maybe when you're in the car line, you're able to dictate into your phone about whatever the goal is. Maybe you're able to research things on Google while you're at lunch during your day job. So I don't think you have to, right? I can only do, you might not be able to spend hours every day, but you probably could spend minutes in some way.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. So extend your day would be one of those things that you're like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and do you think that doing stuff like that, doing extending your day, is that kind of helps you keep your motivation by showing progress, and then the progress then keeps you interested?
Well, that's a very astute, and I had never put it so clearly, but absolutely. If you're able to do, can I do one thing? Somebody here today, can
Yeah,
I
well, you
do,
need more words for the book, so I
yeah,
don't have to worry about that right now.
can I do one
But
thing today that moves me closer to my goal? Sure, you can. I Googled something today. I told a friend that I'm going to work on this. When my husband and the kids went to bed, I looked up how to start a podcast, whatever it is you want to do. Yep. I
oh,
think
that's
there's
interesting.
minutes.
A quick aside. Long time ago, they used to give away, website addresses free for a year sometimes. So like you could
Mhm.
say, okay, whenever they were coming out with, they'd be like, you want to get a .net? They'll give the provider would say you can get a .net for free because you're a customer. And I made one called One Thing Done, and every day I said I got one thing done, and then I would just, and it was just kind of a spoofy kind of thing at the time, and I made a little website anyway. But here's my one thing done, and so I didn't pay for it, so whenever the year was up, I let it drop. But
Yeah.
it reminded me of that when we just were talking about that. Yeah, I got one thing done today, and it used to be kind of a where I was working at. It was always kind of a thing. Did you accomplish anything today? Yeah, I got one thing done.
Yeah.
But that actually is cumulative, right? So in respect to motivation and so forth, then that would be a cumulative thing. You get your one thing done, and then by the time you get through the week, hey, guess what? You got 7 things done.
Yeah.
So
Even if I was talking to somebody about working out, or let's say somebody told me they want to work out,
mhm,
uh, I would say go do one push-up. And yeah, well, I can't do one push-up. Well, start on your knees then.
mhm,
But if I said, I want you to do one push-up every day this week, or every day if I said one push-up every day, I guarantee once somebody got their shoes on, once somebody got down on the ground, they
mhm,
would not stop at one push-up. And then cumulatively, let's say they did three, five, 10, right? Those numbers are going to
mhm.
add up, but it all starts by, like you said, doing that one thing.
That's fantastic. Very interesting. So let's move forward a little bit. And so you're working. It took a while to get the first one out,
Yeah, go
and you're
on.
doing other things. So how long did it take before you got your second book out?
Shoo, you ask good questions here. So first book comes out about 2013. I'm in the insurance business at the time. I'm
Mhm,
already speaking, talking to more people. What Motivation Champs were in the beginning of understanding that I didn't want it to be about me. I thought that there was a lot of people out there, to what you asked at the beginning of the interview. Like the Motivation Champs is not me.
mhm,
It's people sharing their story. It's a mom that wants to share that her kid got an A. It's a dad that wants to share he got a new job. It's somebody writing a book that wants to tackle domestic abuse awareness. So those are all the people sharing their stories. So as I'm speaking back to, I launched the first book. I start talking about it. I get more comfortable speaking about it, sharing stuff on social media. And then once I start speaking, people start coming up to me and saying, I have a story. Listen to this story about my grandson. Listen to this story. I want to write a book. And I started thinking, they have a story. I'm trying to help people share this inspiration, this motivation. If I help other people do it, then it definitely isn't about me, because more people could do it, and I don't have to put a limit. I only have 2 hands and this tiny little brain of mine, but if I get a whole bunch of people sharing their stories, man, we could take this thing a whole lot farther.
So you look at Motivation Champs as a team.
Yeah.
So everybody becomes part of the team essentially, and as they become part of the team, then it grows and it spreads, and then more people can tell their experiences.
Absolutely. They are the champs. All these people that, whether it's, if you like put the @ sign in and put Motivation Champs, you'll find us all over the internet and sharing these stories that hopefully make people say, yeah, I'm going to smile today. There is some good out in this world. I'm going to open the door for somebody. So that's the hope. That was too many that's, but that is the hope.
Look at that. It says at Motivation Champs. You can look it up on the socials there. The but that's really interesting. So then you get to your second one, and your first one was probably a little bit more of a personal book, and you wanted to get it out, right? It took a while, and then now you're looking at this more as a team effort. And then when do you? So I guess at this point do you have like a regular day job, or is this what you're doing now?
Well, today, like in 2024, since sometime in 2019, I've been on my own and I help people share their stories. Leading up to 2019, I was in insurance, I was in pharmaceuticals, I was doing more side stuff with Netflix and Amazon and things like that. So, it was all part of the journey.
And so then now you're kind of on your own, I suppose you would say. Although if it's a team effort, you're not really on your own. But
a lot of teams. So we just hosted a big event this weekend in Chicago called Creative Con, and had creators, podcasters, publishers, people in production from all over the globe come in, people that want to share their story in different capacities, and we were one of the sponsors. And so, no, I'm not alone. There's so many people with these stories that can help somebody else. Right now there's somebody out there looking for your story. They're combing a bookshelf, they're scrolling the internet, looking through their podcast, and they can't find the message that you have, that you're about to share. And if you develop it, you can be their answer. So I just try to help people share that.
Lord help those folks if they find it. But thank you for the encouragement.
There you go.
No, I'm just joking. So Chicago. So are you in the Chicago area? I guess I ask you that now.
No, I'm out of Pittsburgh.
Oh, okay. But you were part of this Creative Con in Chicago.
Yeah, it was the first Creative Con. Yep.
Oh, I haven't heard of that. So I'm anxious to know more about that. Since you were a sponsor, what drew you to it? Besides, I mean, obviously the stories and stuff, but was there any other aspect of it that drew you into it?
Well, one, I'm one of the founders of it.
Oh, okay.
So I'm in, man. So what really drew me to it is, like, I help people write books. I believe in social media, as I've said, but as an author, I'm hanging out with Blue Bob the cat today, and I think that you need to be able to share your story multiple ways. One form of media is not correct. So somebody could write a book and think, well, I don't need to be on social media. I don't need to be on podcasts. I don't need to do all these things. Well, you do. And as Bob is a podcaster, and Bob still has to write. It says at Motivation Champs here. It says a conversation with Dominick Domasky. I read some of his other descriptions on shows that he had. So Bob does need to understand writing and all these different forms of media, promotion. So that was what it was about, figuring out that these are really storytelling forms. And there's different ways. There isn't one best way to tell a story. Sure, I would say, yes, it's the book. You would say, yes, it's podcasting. But there's a mutual a mutual respect, and there's a place for all voices.
Oh, that's interesting. So then the CreatorCon is kind of exploring the multiverse of media, I suppose,
Yeah,
in a
and
way.
understand and storytelling and
Yeah,
knowing.
I just copyrighted that multiverse of media. Thank you.
There you go. That's a good one. It could be another it could be another domain for you.
Oh my gosh, if I bought all the domains that I
Yeah.
think of. The but no, that's fantastic. I think it's interesting. I'll have to now. Is it going to be in Chicago next year?
We're still in the works. It just happened this week. It just happened a few days ago.
Oh
So
gosh,
we
wow,
got teams and
you're exhausted then.
positive. Yeah, right. I just actually got back from. So we shall see.
Oh, okay. Are you going to move it around? You think, or you still haven't decided? I guess.
Yeah, still haven't decided.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
The and so the that's interesting. So if you had a philosophy, if you could give me like the philosophy synopsis of this multiverse of media that you're doing, what would it be? I mean, I think sometimes it's hard for people to understand that because there's so many things out there,
Yeah.
you know,
So
avenues.
absolutely. So one, I could go all day on that, and we'd have to start our whole channel. But my question is, like, I'll use TikTok for example. Let's say you don't believe in TikTok, that you think all TikTok is dancing and kids doing whatever. Well, actually, the hashtag book talk on TikTok has like 112 billion views. So if you were an author, although you don't believe in TikTok,
Mm-hmm.
112 billion views on one hashtag. So maybe these are people that like books. You write books. You might want to check that out.
Mm-hmm.
And now if you're going over there, you might want to make a video that is entertaining or that is articulate, so that people understood whatever message you had. So you start to see the value of these platforms, or for instance, podcasting. Maybe what if instead of hosting my own podcast, what if I could be on multiple podcasts and meet all these different interesting people, and would it in turn help my network? You'll appreciate this. Here's how I'll sum it up. If a tree falls in the woods, does it make a sound? If you are not on one of these other platforms, and I'm not saying overwhelm yourself, I'm saying do what you can handle and then do more. But if you're not on one of these other platforms in any way, when somebody's looking, like we talked about earlier, when somebody's combing the bookshelves, when somebody's scrolling for a podcast, they need that message. They're looking for this smile for an hour. If this podcast isn't there, then what do? They're going to turn to somebody else. But if you are there, then maybe they find the story you're trying to share.
Well, that's interesting. Now, so let's say they find you, right?
Yeah.
So you've put stuff out there, right? Now you need to kind of get them to stick around, right? So what's your kind of foolproof engagement tactic? If you have one, I don't know if I have one.
Yeah, right. I probably don't have one. No, but number one, consistency. So if you made one episode of this show and never made another episode, well, the people that liked episode one are not going to stick around because there are no more episodes. So consistency is key. If you produced something that was interesting and people enjoyed, and then you don't do it again for 6 months, well, in that 6 months, they were looking for something else. So the more consistent you can be with not only your delivery of content, but also your message. Like, if I start to like this podcast and all of a sudden a week from now, Bob does something completely different, Bob starts talking politics, I might be turned off by it and say, oh, that wasn't what I came here for. I came for it because it was light, because it was fun, it was informative. So the consistency of message.
Interesting. So now, okay, that's interesting. So then, so is there? So with books, it's a lot different. So with podcasts, you do something on every week or every couple times a week, or some people do stuff every day. But but with books, it's totally a different kind of scene, right? So
Yeah.
how do you address consistency in the books side of things?
I, you have to give, and this you have to give value. You have to give value without an ask, without a hook, without um, trying to sell me something. Give value, give value, give value, and that community will believe in you, appreciate you, and then when you have other things going on, they will follow. Whether it's writing another book or go into an event where maybe they can meet Bob and get a signature and take a picture. Uh, that those are the things that you're building a community, you're giving value, and then that will pay dividends.
Interesting. That's interesting. So then let's move forward again. So now you've done the Creator Con, right? You're looking
Yeah,
at doing it again next year. You
yeah.
got your 7 books that you've done,
Oh, I've
and
done. Hold on here.
oh, you
Let's.
said 7 at the beginning. Have you
Did
added
I?
to that?
Well, I've been involved in probably written in 7, and I've helped hundreds of people publish
Oh,
books.
okay. So then,
Yeah,
in
so
helping people publish books.
publish books where I make my living. Hundreds of people have.
So
Uh,
are you the publisher at this point then,
yeah,
or are you just
motivation champ, motivation. Sure. So
okay?
at this point, yeah. So I actually got out of my first contract because I love business. I brought a compilation book in, and I said, even though you might think you have the rights to my future projects, because I mentioned I sold the rights,
Hmm.
I brought in a compilation book. I said these other agree on giving you the rights to their future books, and I would need out of that as well. And
Hmm.
that's how that contract was erased.
Oh, okay. So then you're helping folks get to do the publishing and so forth. So
Yeah.
then, how do they? I mean, obviously we have the hashtag up there and so forth, but so if they come to you, then what's the first step?
One, first step's a conversation. Where do they want to go? Where do they want to be in 5 years from now? But the question is, we take them from thought in their head or piece of paper to their published author. They're out giving speeches. They're on Barnes and Noble. They're in Staples selling books. They're in Barnes and Noble selling books. Their books are at Walmart. Their message is clear. They're taking the stages of places like Creative Con. So we take them uh, uh, from spark or idea how still get them every service they could possibly need to help them accomplish their goals.
Okay, so then you're kind of shepherding them a bit. So
Yeah,
you're
that's a
you're
good
helping
word.
them and you're giving them a little bit of a playbook as a way to okay, here's what we need to do, right? We need to kind of you have a good idea. We need to sharpen that idea, and then we need to give you a direction
From
to go.
editors to covers to formatters to developmental editors to coaching sessions to marketing to any to the clarity of story to consumability of story. Yeah, you have a story there, but is that the story the readers want? Is that
Mhm.
the story that 5 years from now you're going to be proud of? And those are all things we really dig into.
So does it matter what topic area, or does it like are you focusing on one? Like everybody's in one genre, say with this, or is it wherever
Well, for me and where my heart and soul is
motivation?
yeah, this belief, but motivation where we touch, it could be overcoming domestic abuse. It could be uh, our friend Sean Murphy, who had cancer 4 times and went blind at one point. It could be children's books. It could be graphic novels. It has to have an underlying tone of motivation, and that's what we
Okay.
really look for, coaches and things like that. But it doesn't have to be rah rah rah, go get them. It can be, but that's not. I mean, I have coaches and fables and things like that as well, but it
I
isn't
was just
all.
thinking you said fables because what came to mind when you said that. It's like if you look at Aesop's fables or morality tales, so you're looking at motivation tales, and so it's
Absolutely.
kind of the same area. I mean, as far as you're trying to, you don't necessarily need to beat people over the head with it.
Yeah.
You just need to have a story that pushes in that direction in order to hopefully inspire somebody potentially, or at the very least, it sounds like inspire the person who's doing it.
Yeah. Inspiration, smiles, positivity. That's my mission, and help other people do the same. If I if I can accomplish that, right? Well, I help this person share one more smile today. Then we might
Mhm.
get to those other goals of living in a world where people hold the door for each other and say hi at the grocery store and things like that. But my part is probably helping all these people um, put out a little positivity.
That's cool. That's fantastic. I mean, you're right. I mean, I'm the person who's always smiling and holding the door, and the world doesn't necessarily return the favor sometimes, but you
Yeah.
can't let that stop you from doing what you think is what you want to do.
Yes. Right on.
So if people want to get in touch with you, I got the at up there. Is there another way, or what's your preferred way of contact?
You did a good job with that. But you could also look at
Uh,
www.motivationchamps.com, and there's ways to get a hold of us. There's schedulers and all kinds of things like that. And I'd love to sit down with anybody who has a story to share and chat about it a little bit, and we'll steer you in the right direction, whether it's with me, somebody else, on your own. We just looking for more positive mojo out there.
well, that's great, and I guess watch out for CreativeCon coming next year in
Yeah, 2.0,
2025.
right? 2.0.
There you go. Well, thanks, Dominic, for talking with me today. I hope you enjoyed it because I did.
Thank you.
But folks, look up Dominic here at motivationchamps.com or on all the socials at Motivation Champs, and hit him up and see what there is for you in the Motivation Champs world.
Thanks, Bob.